"Are you ambivalent?" I was asked. "Well, yes and no," I answered. English is being spoken more and more. Does it happen? And should it replace the mother tongue? And what happens to the mother tongue? A language dies when the last person who speaks it dies. There is nothing unusual about a language dying. Civilizations have come and gone throughout history, and with them their language. Who today speaks Hittite? That was a lingua franca. Aramaic? Well, us a little bit in the Middle East. But it was also previous lingua franca. Language extinction has always happened, but today it's happening more. Much more. It's generally estimated that of the 6,000 or so world languages, about half are going to die out in this present century. Actually, there is a language becoming extinct every 2 weeks. How do we know? By comparative data collected by linguists, and many languages are no longer passed on to the children. In fact, a 1999 survey showed that 96% of the world's languages were spoken by 4% of the people. Why are so many languages dying? Natural disasters, cultural assimilation, or genocide cover most of the reasons. Small communities can be wiped out by hurricanes, tsunamis, drought, disease, etc. Cultural assimilation is the biggest threat. About 500 years ago, colonialism spread a small number of languages around the world. I'm talking about English, French, Spanish, and Portuguese. When one culture assimilates to another, the sequence of events appears to be the same worldwide. It happens in 3 stages. You all still awake? Good, good. I don't have to make you get up and jump 3 times because it's 3 stages? No? Okay, good. The first is strong pressure put on native peoples to speak the dominant language. This can be a top-down political pressure, or it can be a bottom-up pressure coming from the fashionable trends admiring this new language and culture. The second stage is a phase of bilingualism. That is, the people acquire the new language while still retaining competence in their old, and in a short time this bilingualism begins to decline and the old language is replaced by the new. And the third stage is that in which the young of the nation prefer the new language. They identify it and find it serves their needs better. Both the young and their parents may feel ashamed of the old language. The old language is used more or less, and then just at home, and then monolingualism is eventual. I don't want to go into what can be done. It's basically a program called revitalization, which is possible once linguists have documented it. It involves government funding, it involves the desire to keep the culture alive, and it usually doesn't happen. One outstanding example of that is modern Hebrew. It is the only example of a language being revived after 2,000 years of not being a live language. It was used in prayer and as a lingua franca over these 2,000 years, but it was not a mother tongue. It was done to establish a common culture and a national identity. Welsh also has stopped its decline towards extinction, is showing signs of a real revival. The government has established this in 2 language laws, and you see increasing signs of Welsh language presence all over Wales today. My point isn't to go into how to revive languages. My goal is to explain how I see the use of English. Before I continue, a word about dialects. Dialects have always been a form of bilingualism, especially if the dialect is very different from what is expected in the written media. Dialects are regional. Once people travelled less and you could clearly distinguish what side of the river people lived on according to their dialect. Today dialects exist as strongly as ever. If once they were more rural, they're now urban. Some people see dialects as a more primitive form of speech, but there is no primitive language. All languages are complex. All languages have complex phonology, grammar, and lexicons. And all languages can be analyzed into a range of dialects that reflect not only the regional, but also the social background of the speaker. Standard English, that's what we teach, Standard English, is a dialect like any other, but one with extra prestige. Please note the difference between dialect and accent. Accent is pronunciation, but dialect is also grammar and vocabulary, i.e., in my dialect we say small child. A Scottish dialect may say wee bairn. Normally speakers of a dialect will have the same accent, but in some cases, as in Standard English, the dialect is spoken by a large range of accents across the world. Most people in Britain will have their dialect and also understand but often not speak Standard English. On my first day in my BA course at university, I had a class in which we had about 20 sentences. We had to mark which were ungrammatical. I marked about 50% grammatical and 50% ungrammatical. To my surprise, the reply was that all were spoken by native English speakers and were part of the dialect's grammatical structure, i.e. they were all correct as far as linguistics was concerned. They would not have passed an exam in school. If the teacher came and spoke that dialect in an English class, the parents would be furious. We're teaching a certain dialect of Standard English. Okay. Are we talking about two languages and two dialects? Where's the boundary between language and dialect? It's a fuzzy boundary. We could have mutual intelligibility. We know that there's between Sweden and Norway on the boundaries. They each speak on the borders. They speak their own language, but they're very similar because it's actually a continuum of language. To help you understand the richness that can exist in a local dialect, I'd like to give you the example of Cockney. Indeed, most of you know Cockney is an accent. We say butter instead of butter, and the thumb instead of the thumb. But it's more than that in a pronunciation. It actually has its own grammar and vocabulary that qualifies it as a dialect. Here are some examples of Cockney rhyming slang. Apples and pears is slang for stairs. We would say, up the apples to Bedfordshire, or up the apples and pears. Sometimes they even knock out the rhyming word. So a Cockney would say, up the apples to Bedfordshire. That would mean going up the stairs to Bedfordshire. Adam and Eve is slang for believe. Can you Adam and Eve it? Whistle and flute is slang for suit. Trouble and strife and bag for life is for wife. I took me bag for life to the dolly mixtures. What do you think the dolly mixtures could be? Pictures, yeah, cinema. La-di-da for cigar. 2 pints of bitter and a lardy, please. Jumbo jet. Have I got that? Oh, we've got Mary Rose first. Mary Rose is slang for nose. Keep your Mary out of my business, mate. Jumbo jet. I'll put a jumbo on that horse. I'd like to draw your attention very briefly to the principle of fundamental significance. Multilingualism is the norm of human condition. It's not the exception. Are you surprised? If you've lived your life in a monolingual environment, you could easily believe that this is the regular way of life across the globe. Yes, in many studies, there are many studies about if multilingualism is harmful or beneficial. And many of these studies will say if the child should learn another language. But this is the way of the world for 3/4 of the world's population. There are no official statistics, but if over 6,000 languages exist in 200 countries, there must be a tremendous amount of language overlap. And clearly there must be multilingualism or at least bilingualism. And there is no such thing as a monolingual language. Even in Britain, with over 350 minority languages we have that are in regular use. And in the Philippines, I have an example. The lady who looks after my mother-in-law, Elizabeth, her mother tongue is a language called Ibaloy. But she has a second mother tongue, as many of her relatives have a different mother tongue. So as a small child, she also spoke Ilocano. At school, she received bilingual education, like many children in the Philippines, but not with either of her mother tongues. She was educated in the official language, Tagalog, and also in the second official language, English. So this is the normal state of affairs for people in the Philippines and many others, 3 or 4 languages. The reasons for this multilingualism or bilingualism are multifold. They can be political, cultural, education, or economic, or because of natural disasters. Sometimes research has been done on populations who have socio-economic reasons and socio-economic problems, and then they say, well, the kid's not doing so well at school because they speak 2 languages or something like that. Sometimes people can speak a language but read and write in another. What level of proficiency can be judged to be bilingualism? Perfect fluency in 2 languages does exist, but it's the exception rather than the rules. We increasingly hear today that English no longer belongs to the English. It's an international language with standard English as the preferred dialect. So do we care if languages are wiped out? Won't we all understand each other better with one language, English of course? Won't a more universal worldview better serve world peace and harmony? And are we HD teachers envoys of this goal? Here's my I believe. I believe that English, outside of English-speaking countries, should continue to be a lingua franca but not sole language, taking over the world. Lingua franca means a bridge language, a language that allows 2 people that speak different vernacular languages to be able to communicate. If one person's mother tongue is Swahili and the other's Portuguese, they may be able to communicate in English, for example, as a lingua franca, or maybe Portuguese. This preserves a person's mother tongue and their culture. Research indicates that people who are true bilinguals, that learnt the language in a mother tongue fashion before the age of 7, will be more intelligent, have wider concepts, see the world more through one type of mental viewpoint, be more tolerant, be more able to express themselves, be tuned to their own culture and the needs of their own corner of the world. Yep. Maybe I need to skip some. I'll go fast. And why English and not Esperanto? Why didn't Esperanto work? Esperanto was the invention of a Polish oculist called Ludwig Lazarus Zamenhof, who died in 1917. It is perhaps the most successful and heard about of artificial languages and has about 1.5 million fluent speakers at various levels of proficiency. Like other artificial languages, it was and is seen as the key to mutual world understanding and peace. However, natural languages foster identity and internal variation in the form of dialects, and for a host of reasons, artificial languages, of which Esperanto is one, have not gained popular following. It appears that language needs to have a status that motivates people to speak it, and it needs a culture that stands about it, and stands behind it. What have we talked about until now? Happiness is not a destination. It's a matter of traveling. And what is your role in all of this? It's endowing true bilingualism. I repeat that. Your role is in endowing true bilingualism. And how do you do it? By teaching babies and children English with background hearing, positive reinforcement, and with the best, most positive and most suitable learning materials. You are giving children year after year of consecutive learning, joyful, systematically, and with a love of learning English and other disciplines for life. Well done, and thank you.